nobody should be anxious as to what will happen. Yeah, next year, each one of you, including the 1,060,000 across the country, next year, each one of you will be in Form 1. And apart from the places that we have made sure that each one of you will have a place in Form 1 next year, the government of Kenya will also pay for that education for every Kenyan child in Form 1 through to Form 4.
That is Deputy President William Ruto there speaking in Kiambu County, where he was overseeing the KCPE examination at Musa Gitao Primary School in Kiambu County, assuring all the candidates that they will all be absorbed in Form 1 next year. This was made there by President Uhuru Kenyatta when he visited the Uhuru Gardens Primary School. Let's bring in our education experts, Ndio Obondo and Ferdinand Mbeche. Ndio, we begin with you. A great promise by all means, but this brings into question matters capacity. Does the country have the capacity to ensure a 100% transition rate from primary to secondary school?
Expansion of school facilities. We have new schools, we have new classrooms being built, but I believe it might be important for now putting that promise into action so that the ministry can be able to follow up immediately and begin to tell Kenyans how ready are we to be able to make sure that everybody, or all these candidates that are sitting their exams today, over 1 million young Kenyans, have a place in Form 1 next year. It's a good thing that I think this is happening, but we should be able to make sure that we plan and budget. I hope they have planned and budgeted for it so that it doesn't remain a roadside declaration. But what I think we need to emphasize is that we need to be able to ensure that every year we plan for the transition from primary to secondary. But I believe we should be able to accommodate, because I know, one, we've been allocating very good resources to education. If we prioritize, we should be able to make sure that the current schools are expanded, and we should also be able to assess whether we have new opportunities in upcoming schools, but also new classrooms in the others. So I think it is a good thing that we need to support, and hopefully the ministry has planned or is planning for it. To be able to make sure that we accommodate. Right,
because it has already been made to the students. Ferdinand, let's perhaps begin with a look at the past 2 years and where the numbers have left us. The transition rate in 2016 was at 83.93% when the country 942,000 pupils sitting for the KCPE examination, and the transition rate was expected to go higher last year in 2017. Perhaps bring us up to date with the numbers. What was the transition rate last year, and why do we expect it to go higher this year?
Oh, thank you for that. I need to emphasize that education is a basic human right. And we are very happy that the government of Kenya has made a commitment to ensure that we improve transition levels. And when you look at the percentage that we are talking about, indeed there has been an increase in terms of transition from primary to the second subsector of education. But I need to emphasize that we may need to go an extra mile in terms of our planning process, so that we are able to ensure we have adequate physical facilities. We have also adequate teachers. We have also to ensure that we have enough or adequate teaching learning resources. But I also need to emphasize that apart from the tuition that is being given by the government, we have also the hidden cost. We have to identify these particular hidden costs, like, for example, cost for uniform, food, transport. So we need also to find interventions that can be able to address those particular issues that may affect that transition. So in my view, we are in the right direction. What we may need to do is to streamline our planning process.
All right. And among the things that are expected to increase the transition rate was a promise of free-day secondary school education. That was a promise that was expected to begin in January this year. That was not to happen. About 50,000 more students or more pupils have been, there's an addition rather, 50,000 more pupils in this year's total number of registered candidates. Is it a promise that that is likely to be implemented? Because this will really increase the transition rate.
I think this particular commitment is achievable given the fact that the president has a commitment to fulfill the 4 agenda. And the key is actually investment in education.
Right.
Given that particular framework and the kind of resources that are available in this particular country, it is possible to ensure that we can be able to expand our physical. We can also ensure we have adequate teachers, which would actually go into not only improving transition, but at the same time addressing the issue of quality of education. And that's why we are saying then we must come up with more interventions that can be able to address the hidden costs that may hinder that particular transition. However, we have actually the assurance from the president and his government that indeed it is committed to ensure that we are able to ensure that basic education is free and compulsory. So we are in the right direction, and the government has the commitment, and it has actually the resources. What we only require is to ensure we have expert knowledge, expert planning, and clear policy guidelines that can be able to ensure we make transition sustainable.
All right, and there seems to be a lot of policy legislation when it comes to increasing the transition rate. And let me come to you. On the screen now is just snippets of the incidents that have been reported in the past 2 days, many to do with the KCPE candidates. The incidents ranging from pregnancy to some taking poison, to some being locked up with their boyfriends. Well, another case of a KCPE candidate was stabbed by the boyfriend just hours to the beginning of national examinations. And if we're talking of more than a dozen cases in just a span of 2 days, imagine how many more fall by the wayside in the course of a whole education year. What more can the government put in place to address such issues?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think on that particular issue, what we need to appreciate before we get to government is that education is a responsibility or something that we need to get involved in as parents, as teachers, as communities, and then government also comes in. Because some of these things, if we leave to government alone, we are going to lose a number of learners or children. For instance, if you have cases where college students or community members are able to hide students in their rooms or in their villages, I think communities must come out and be able to support with some vigilance. And parents must also be able to monitor the children. Having said so, I think we also need to make sure that government on their part, we are able to do much more monitoring than we are doing now, even beyond exam period. Because some of these incidences can be avoided if we were able to monitor closely the learners and work closely with other players like parents, communities, and teachers to be able to avert this. Again, what we also need to look at is we are not going to have an exam process of more than 1 million people without an incident. But what we can be able to do to make sure that we also talk to the learners beforehand in terms of why they need to behave in certain ways. I think some of this happens because we have not prepared them very well. We've just been teaching to prepare them for exams, but we don't focus on the other skills that are important for them to be able to avoid what is happening to them, like life skills, or what we call nowadays the 21st century skills. So what is happening is that we need to look at beyond the exams. How do we prepare the learners for the life out of the school? Because I think if we are focusing, doing a balance of, yes, we are doing preparation for the exams, but we also know that you must be able to be effective member of your society and contribute effectively in those communities. We should be focusing on life skills as well.
All right, and that is an extended conversation on its own. But Ferdinand, the Kenya National Examinations Council NEC says results for the KCPE examinations will be out by end of November. That is just 3-4 weeks to come. Following that will be the Form 1 placement process, one that in previous years has been shrouded in a lot of controversy. Many parents saying there is no transparency in this process. Perhaps will having this process taking place early, 2-3 months to the beginning of the year, increase the transition rate from primary to secondary school?
Oh, thank you for that one of concern. In my view, the time might not be very significant, in the sense that NEC has been preparing for this examination the whole of this year. So in our view, the time for them to mark and ensure the result are reached by the end of November is possible,
right,
because they have actually the timeline. They have actually trained enough examiners. And we are sure that the time given, and they have never also to learn from history. So whatever mistakes were done before, I'm sure NEC has made interventions that such a kind of mistakes are not going to be repeated to ensure there is transparency and accountability in terms of the outcomes. So the time that we have is adequate in the sense that we also require some period for us people to prepare for Form 1 in January.
Right.
So that the 1 month in December, it would be adequate for the parents to be able to plan how their children will report in first term. Because we are saying, apart from government support, there is also parental responsibility in terms of cost. So the 1 month in December, in my view, is very significant for parents to prepare to ensure that their children will get what they require for them to report in school.
All right.
So the time, to me, is adequate because NEC has done it before. It did it last year, and they are actually prepared for this.
They will do it again. Yes. But let's talk about the Form 1 placement process. A lot of controversy has shrouded this process in recent years. I personally covered a story about 2 years ago of a KCPE student. She had well over 400 marks, but still could not access education because of fees, because she was from a disadvantaged background. So again, the Form 1 placement process promises students that if they do well, they will be guaranteed a slot in secondary schools. Where do the gaps come in after the results come out?
In terms of the transition rates, as you are indicating, is that those ones who come from poor socioeconomic backgrounds, to some level, are disadvantaged in terms of accessing secondary education. And this comes in, as I said before, because of the hidden cost. And there should be interventions that can be able to address such a kind of inequalities. So that we are saying that the county government has to supplement the national government's efforts in terms of bursaries. And we also need to identify more stakeholders who would go into identifying those particular needy cases so that they can be supported to pursue their education.
Right.
Because these are the kind of intellectuals that we want to develop for us to promote socioeconomic development. So it should be not only the responsibility of the government, but a wide approach in terms of opening up the scope of quite a number of stakeholders who can support those particular learners from poor socioeconomic backgrounds.
And this, of course, sets the stage for the second set of national examinations, that is the KCSE examinations. And let's come to you again. In previous years, the rate of cheating that has surrounded these examinations has been quite high. Let's talk about the reforms that have been witnessed in the education sector in previous months, really. Many of them in the third term, especially, very many restrictions, but there are those who say that such restrictions, coupled with the manner in which the exams are being invigilated, because we have security officials with guns invigilating in these rooms, could deal a big blow to the morale of candidates across the country. Is this something that is of concern, really?
It should be a concern, but at the same time, it should be seen as a strategy in trying to ensure the security systems in terms of the management of examinations is efficient. And we're also saying that the presence of these particular police officers within the school setup, one, we need to synthesize the learners as we go into KCSE, for example, that these are also parents. Apart from them being in uniform, at one particular point in time, one could be their father or their mother. So we are saying we must also look at the police force as an apparatus that can be able to assist, serve society. If we are able to have that particular mindset changed, then we could be able to see the police officers within the school setups as a system of trying to ensure in providing a climate that could be conducive for doing the examinations. So then, however, because we do not do thorough preparation even during the learning process, that we can have even these particular police officers within the school setup to give them an orientation of what happened in the school setup, so that there is a rapport created between the learners during the teaching learning process. So when they find them in the national examinations, then they are not new figures in the examinations. So if that is done, and that's why when we look at the learning process, we are looking at the teaching and learning process where we want to look at evaluation as the end segment. So if we have the policemen or the police officers brought on board throughout the entire cycle of learning, then we shall get used within the school system, we shall get used to these particular officers and see them as human beings like any other who are coming on board to ensure that our security system is to our advantage when we are sitting for examinations. So that should be encouraged in that particular direction. And why we may require to have them within the school setups is because we want to address a long-term problem of the school, the cheating in examinations. And remember, in this country, examinations are very key in determining career development, in determining progression in an aspect of life.
Right.
So that's why we want to ensure that nobody takes due advantage to access examinations unfairly. So we should look at this as a system of trying to beef up the security system in managing and administering these particular examinations. And then, remember, within these particular officers are not allowed to go to the examination rooms. They are actually supposed to guard the school compound to ensure that the security system is okay.
Sure.
So they are not supposed to be in contact with the learners at one point, so that then their negative influence may not come on board, unless they are not also well trained and given a good orientation in terms of their roles.
But of course, although we have had incidents before where students or a student or two has been shot, and you're very, very briefly, your closing comments on this. The president has taken a very tough stance on education and especially in exam cheating. What outcome do you expect from this in this coming year in terms of transition rate?
In terms of what is happening now, I think it's a good thing, as we have said. We expect that the transition rate will be higher, but at least one caution that we need to throw to government. This has been promised before, and I think 2-3 years down the line, the government said that they are going to offer free education, but we still see, even in day schools, parents paying a lot of money. I think government should be able to come out and clearly say, this is the cost of taking children through a day school or through a boarding school. This is the contribution that the government will make, and parents should be able to be prepared and told, this is what we expect you to pay. Because they say they're paying everything, but we still see schools asking parents to make payments. What again we need to do is to ensure that as we move down the line, we should be able to be clear by maybe end of December, as we do the end of November, as we do the selection, to hear from the Minister of Education the readiness to accommodate the over 1 million children that are sitting the exams this year.
And it is a conversation, of course, that we will continue as we keep an eye on these developments. Education specialists Ndio Obondo and Ferdinand Mbeche on the big story tonight. It is day 2 of the Kenya Certificate of Primary Education exam.